United States banks are in big trouble, and this has been brewing for quite a while, but this weekend the Fed held an emergency, unannounced meeting and dropped an absolute bombshell on the financial markets. Now, before I get into the details of this meeting, I need to walk you through the timeline so that you understand why the meeting is important. It won't make a lot of sense if you don't know where we're at in the banking sector. In 2023, Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, and First Republic Bank all went out of business. This is where the second, third, and fourth largest banks to ever go under in United States history. And no one cared. We swept it under the rug like it wasn't even there. It was a big deal that no one paid attention to. Then, in 2024, New York Community Bank reported a loss and their stock plummeted and they had to be bailed out and renamed to stay open. After that, in 2025, Tricolor Holdings, one of the largest auto lenders in the world, went bankrupt with 1 to 10 billion assets on their sheet, mostly held by JP Morgan and Fifth Third banks. And this is all just the tip of the iceberg. The Fed has now quietly admitted that we are in a worse financial position in banking than we were in 2007, right before the Great Financial Crisis. This is because in the Great Financial Crisis, housing was the main driver of the crash. It was one factor. But right now on banking's debt sheets, you have credit card debt that is failing at the highest rate in history. You have auto loans failing at an incredible rate, hence Tricolor going out of business. You have commercial real estate that is absolutely getting crushed because Amazon and COVID put so many people out of business. There are empty buildings everywhere in every city, and banks have all of these loans and coming due that they can't pay on their balance sheet. This doesn't even touch into shadow lending, which has $5 trillion of assets, is completely non-transparent, and is held by 25 of the biggest banks in America. These are problems in the banking industry, and they are coming to a head now. Now, that brings us up to our meeting. The Fed held an emergency meeting this weekend because after the Great Financial Crisis, a standing repo facility was created, and this is an emergency fund for banks to borrow from. When banks need to borrow cash overnight to keep operations moving the next day, they borrow from this fund. Now, they do use it from time to time, and in 2021, it was used very, very strongly, and in 2022, we saw what happened to the market. Now, we have seen $50 billion in October come from that fund. It's the highest since 2021, and it was immediately followed by $20 billion more coming out of that fund. If you combine that with the QT of the Fed and the hoarding that bigger banks are doing of cash, you have a liquidity crisis, and that means that banks can't borrow anymore or get the money they need to stay open. This is going to come to a head very quickly. Now, let me caution you about this because it's important to understand that these types of financial items don't necessarily hit the market the day you hear about them. Take The Big Short. Michael Burry knew about that years before 2008, and it took a while for it to get there. So once it did, the market crashed and fell off a cliff and lost 2/3 of its value.